writer-director Elaine May's Mikey and Nicky, starring Peter Falk and John Cassavetes. This movie has kind of interesting history. So first, let me tell a bit of the history of Mikey and Nicky before we get into the movie proper. I think this is a movie that you kind of divide in two halves. The film starts, the character of Nicky thinks that there's a hit out on him. He's held up in a hotel room. He worked for the bookmaking bank, and and him and another guy who got whacked. Yeah. All right, stole some money, so now they're after him. But he's actually heard that that Resnick, who's the head mob guy, played by the acting teacher Sanford Meisner. He's actually heard that there's actually a hit on him. So the whole almost part of the story of the movie almost is like, will Nicky live through the night? He's got to live through the night. Okay, if he can live through the night, they can maybe get him out of town. But will he live through the night? And we kind of live through that night with him to see what happens. So he calls his old friend, who's a gangster with him in this business, but he's known him since he was a little boy. He's literally a lifelong friend. And he calls his friend Mikey. He's the only one he can really trust because they go back so far. And Mikey shows up to help him, to calm him down, and to take care of him and, hopefully maybe even get him out of town, possibly. This is all set up in the first half of the movie. And the first half of the movie is, you don't want Nicky to get killed. You want him to get out of this. And you want Mikey to help him. And then the movie has, I actually think, one of the more devastating narrative reveals you can see in a film. In the barn. Yeah. Obviously you're buying Falk and Cassavetes' friendship because they were best friends, and they're just they're literally maybe one of the best dramatic acting teams that there is, and you want Mikey to help him, and you think he's helping them. Then all of a sudden it cuts to the Ned Beatty character, who's the hitman, and he's on the phone, and Nicky is being fingered, and you have no idea who's fingering him, but you figure, okay, well, this is the hitman, he's going to go get him and everything. And then it cuts to the bar that they're at, and you see Peter Falk hang up the phone. When you realize that Mikey is setting him up and is fingering him for the hitman, it's unfathomable. You can't believe it. You can't even comprehend that he is actually betraying him to that degree, and makes you fucking despise him, and you want him to come to his senses. It's unconscionable. That's the first half of the movie. Yeah. The second half of the movie is when you realize what a true piece of shit Nicky is, and he deserves to die. And at the end of the movie, you kind of want him to die, and it's Peter Falk. It's Mikey who you feel sorry for. It is Mikey who rips your heart out at the end. And that is just a fucking brilliant dramatic structure for a movie basically about two people that you carry through for the beginning of the end, and it's a magnificent pressure cooker for a crime story. I think that's in particularly Peter Falk's confronting him about the joke that happened in the restaurant.
It's painful.
I think that is not just one of the best scenes of this movie, if not the best scene in this movie. It's one of the best written and best acted scenes between two men in any film of the 70s, as far as I'm concerned. It is as good as any of the Harvey Keitel, Robert De Niro sequences in Mean Streets or in Taxi Driver. He goes, I walked into that restaurant and you're sitting there with Resnick, and I have to say your name 3 times because I'm too embarrassed to walk away without getting an answer. Yeah. And then you give me a little acknowledgement, and then just as I left, you turn to Resnick and you say, oh, wait a minute. I forgot to order the clams from that guy. And you laughed. I said that for you. Yeah. I said that for you. I said, no, that's why I said it loud enough that you would hear. That joke was for you. That joke was not for Resnick. That joke was for you. Like, I can't fight on the bus. I'll get fired. We'll get off.
You'll get off the back.
I'll let you go. Don't hit me, but then we'll go outside, and then we're going to really have at it. Mikey Nicky was made, I think they started making it around 74 or so, and she was shooting it for Paramount. She ended up shooting an incredible amount of footage, and for whatever reason that I have no fucking clue, she was in the editing room for like a year. No, I don't understand why, but she was. And so by the time they were done with it in 1976, Paramount didn't know what to fucking do with this, and they really weren't into it. And they just threw it out there. They threw it out there. I remember when it opened in 76. They had an interesting little ad in the paper. I think it played in one theater in Westwood, or like the Fine Arts, Lemley Fine Arts or something like that. Just one theater in Los Angeles. And none of the critics knew what to make of it. And I do think the Peter Falk, John Cassavetes thing derailed them a little bit. But Mikey and Nicky is well shot, and it's shot, it's directed, and so then basically, the film just disappeared. Paramount didn't give a damn about it. But in '84, a small release company, Castle Hill Productions, they also released the Henry Jaglin movie, Can't You Bake a Cherry Pie? Mm-hmm. Somehow they got the rights to Mikey and Nicky. And in 1984, it got re-released again. And this was in the time in Los Angeles where the Beverly Center Entertainment Complex was like the big art house place. And so it just got like booked in a theater there. And then in 84, that's when it got the reviews that it never got. That's when the Stanley Kaufman piece comes out. That's when the Michael Ventura rave review and the LA Weekly comes out. And that's when people started appreciating it for what it is. So that's its history. I'm wondering, coming from a point of view of a writer and coming from where she's coming from more of a comedy place, what the fuck made her sit down to write this story about these two fucking dudes? What is the impetus of that? I don't think it's just to make a crime film. I don't think she's that kind of genre person that wants to do that. So what is it? What is it that made her make this story about these two guys? I was fascinated by that. So fascinated that I got in touch with Elaine May, and I called her up, and I asked her. What was it about these guys that you wanted to tell the story about? I was thinking maybe that it was actually a Hollywood story. That these were people she knew in Hollywood. It's a famous dynamic, and we can all come up with 20 other little examples of people's relationships in Hollywood. Yeah. It could be. So anyway, I was thinking maybe that might be what it was, and she just simply came up with a gangster genre, like I said, to make it a movie. So I called her up and asked her about it. And she didn't understand what the fuck I was talking about at all when I brought that up. So I brought it up to her.
Observational
and
metaphor.
She's like, wait, I don't. What is Hollywood about my story? I go, oh no, I'm not saying your story is Hollywood. So I laid it out just exactly the way I laid it out to you. And she was like, oh, I see where you're going with that. That makes sense. That's not where I was coming from though. Okay. So where were you coming from? I knew two brothers exactly like this when I was a child in Chicago. I go, you did? She goes, yes. When I was a little girl, we lived in an apartment building, and there were different people in the area, both Italians and Greeks and Jews, that were all involved with the mob, and especially with bookmaking and bookmaking banks. And there were these two brothers that were pretty much the emblem of Mikey and Nicky in my mind. Both gangsters, but one brother was kind of beloved by everybody. Everybody liked him. They liked being with him. They thought he was funny. He was handsome, and everyone dug him. And then the big bosses really, really liked him. And then he stole money from them. And then they wanted to kill him. And part of the reason they wanted to kill him is because they liked him so much. Yeah. They like, how dare you? When the mob likes you that much, and then you fuck them, that's when they really, really want to teach you a lesson. And it was to such a degree that the mother of the two sons even had a favorite son. And the favorite son was the Nicky character, the one in trouble. And the mob had gotten in touch with her and told her, you have to send one of your sons to this one place because that's where we're going to take care of him. And she knew she had no choice. So she did a Sophie's choice.
Yeah.
And she sent the other son. I'm like, holy shit. That's wild. Well, no, in real life, yes, but even in the movie, as Mikey and Nicky, they might, especially the way they talk about each other's parents all the time. Well, I mean, these guys might as well be brothers. Yeah. All right. Yeah. You know, Mikey and Nicky completely and utterly works as a magnificent crime story.
No one will hire you in a rock and roll band. No one will hire you in a rock and roll band.
I was the champion of like the movie that that all the critics put down and said was a fiasco.
You like
Ishtar? I championed Ishtar. No, Ishtar's a funny movie. It's a funny movie, especially comedies. Yeah. It's like critics have a thing about like, you know, spending a lot of money on comedies. It seems obscene to them. Well, where the budget kind of went south for the most part was the fact that like Warren Beatty and Dustin Hoffman kind of like had their full freight on the movie.
No one will hire you in a rock and roll band. No one will hire you in a rock and roll band.
So Dustin Hoffman got his big salary. Warren Beatty got his big salary. And everything that goes with it. It would be like if when they did, during the time when they did Ishtar, Tom Hanks was famous, but he wasn't the superstar that he is now.
Right.
All right. So if that had starred Tom Hanks and Peter Scolari, like the two guys from Bosom Buddies.
Yeah.
Well, then that movie would have cost a lot less and would have been just as funny. Right. Those guys were terrific together, and they would have been really good in that role, and the film would have been seen for what it is.
Yeah. I'm a big Elaine May. I think she's one of the greatest screenwriters of all time.
Yeah,
and I think her direction of movies, I'm a big fan of that. Elaine May is a writer, one of the best screenwriters in the history of Hollywood. And she's a writer who does not put her name on her own projects that much. She would not much rather, but she oftentimes, for a lot of money, would come in and do huge rewrites that she didn't take credit on. Yeah, they can pay well, and she did some of her most standout work that way. She was very protective about what she eventually put her name on.